Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we're going to do a buyout preview video here to discuss. With the Stanley Cup almost done, 48 hours after the Stanley Cup ends, we have the buyout window open, and there are a lot of speculations about some potential buyouts we could see over the next few days. We'll go to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the Internet Hockey Channel. Before we get into this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe down below. Thank all your support and will enable the truth of you guys. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. And don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below discussing all discussing today's video. Now in this video, I'm going to be looking at some players who I personally think could be bought out. Now some of these guys have been mentioned over in the rumor mill as potential buyouts that I have also listed here. Some of them are personally guys who I could see potentially be bought out with the way the cap hit's structured. And I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on who you think I probably missed and who else you would include in this buyout list. But we'll start here with the Buffalo Sabres. There's been a lot of traction over the past while that a lot of people think Jeff Skinner will be bought out by the Buffalo Sabres. Now Skinner has 3 years left on his current contract at a $9 million cap hit. Buying him out would save the Sabres $7.5 million in cap space this year, would save him $4.5 million next year, would save them $2.5 million 2 years from now in year 3 of the buyout, and then he would have 3 extra seasons on his cap hits at a $2.4 million cap hit. So it's not an overly easy buyout to do, but Skinner and the high cap hit he has, plus the fact that he didn't have an overly good season this past year, it might make sense for the Buffalo Sabres to admit the fee on that contract and wind up giving him a fresh start elsewhere. So that's a name that has been circling around over the past while that I think could wind up happening. Another one is Carolina Hurricanes forward Jesperi Kotkaniemi. And I think at this point in time they'd rather trade him, but a buyout really helps them. At this point in time, if they bought him out, the first 3 years of the buyout would be an $835,000 cap hit, so it would save them $3.985 million. It would then save them $4.365 million in years 4 through 6 of the buyout. And then they would have 6 more years of a cap penalty of $835,000. So this would be an easy buyout to do for the Hurricanes and would give them under $1 million in cap penalties over the next 12 years. So it is a long buyout, but it will definitely work out for the Carolina Hurricanes. So this could be a really interesting buyout potential for the Carolina Hurricanes if they're able to move Jesperi Kotkaniemi. Going over to Dallas Stars, there are a couple of guys on the Stars list that I could see wind up being bought out. One is Ryan Suter. If the Stars buy out the final year of Suter's contract, they save $2.86 million for this upcoming offseason, and then they also have a $1.4 million cap penalty for next year. So it's once again not an overly ideal thing, and Suter's actually been a pretty good defenseman for the Dallas Stars, but it would save them a decent amount of cap space. That could be a decent buyout for the Stars. Another buyout that could potentially happen for the Stars would be buying out Radek Faksa. Faksa, if they were to buy him out, would save them $1.8 million on the cap hit for this upcoming season, then give them a $900,000 cap penalty for next year. So it's another one that I'm not sure if they'd overly thrilled with doing this, but it would also save them a decent amount of cap space for this upcoming season. So that's another team that I think could wind up using the buyout window to improve. And then we have 2 guys in Detroit, in Justin Holl and Jeff Petrie, who could see be bought out. Now, if the Red Wings were to buy out Jeff Petrie, it would save them about $2 million in cap space. It will give them a $1.5 million cap hit for this year. It will give the Penguins a $1 million cap hit for this year, and the Habs a $1.5 million cap hit for this year. And it will also give the Red Wings a $375,000 cap penalty for next year. The Canadiens the same exact cap penalty, and the Penguins a $250,000 cap penalty. So it would be a decent trade for both sides. But it could be an interesting move there for the Penguins, Canadiens, and the Red Wings if the Red Wings were able to buy out Jeff Petrie. So it'll be an interesting move there. If you go over to Justin Holl for the Detroit Red Wings, for his buyout, buying him out would save them for the next 2 seasons a $2.26 million cap hit, and then would also give them a $1.1 million cap penalty for the next 2 years afterwards. So once again, not an overly ideal situation there for the Red Wings, but given Holl's role in the team and his cap hit, I think it could be a really good potential buyout there for the Red Wings if they were to do that. The Oilers also have a buyout potential here in Jack Campbell. We talked about this earlier in the year. Campbell has 3 years left on his contract. If they were to buy him out, it would save them $3.9 million in cap space for this upcoming season. It would save them $2.7 million in the cap space for next year. It would save them $2.4 million in cap space the year after, and will leave them with a $1.5 million cap hit for the next 3 seasons afterwards. So it'll be a really interesting buyout option there for the Oilers, but it could be a really good option there for the Oilers to try and get out of that Campbell contract. Now, there's also a handful of Canadians that I could see wind up being bought out this offseason. One is Gallagher. It's not worked out overly well as a bottom 6-4 at this point in time for the Habs. Buying him out would actually save them $300,000 on the cap space, so they'd actually gain $300,000 if they were to buy him out this offseason. It'll give them $4.3 million in cap savings for next year and $1.8 million in cap savings in year 3, but it would give them a $2.1 million cap penalty for the 3 years afterwards. So once again, not overly ideal, but for this year, it would help the Canadiens immensely. I know the next 2 years will not be overly ideal, but it would definitely help this Canadiens team get out of that Gallagher contract. If they were to buy out Josh Anderson, who's another guy I think could be bought out, it will be the same sort of thing. They will be able to save $5.2 million on his cap hit for this year, $3.2 for next year, $1.7 for the year afterwards, and then they would have a 3 years left on his cap hit of $1.72 million. So it will be a cap penalty of that much. Not overly ideal once again. I think they would rather trade him with his full cap hit, but that could be an interesting move there for the Canadiens. Another guy who I think could also be bought out will be Yoel Armia. They buy him out, they would save about $2.5 million in cap space for this year, and they would have a $1.2 million cap penalty for next year. So once again, not overly ideal, but I think it could work because Armia has not been great forward for the Canadiens at this point in time, so that could be a really good move there for the Canadiens. Go over to the Islanders. There's a couple of players there I think they could wind up buying out. One will be Anders Lee. Captain Anders Lee has not worked out overly well the past couple of years. Buying him out would save the Islanders $4.1 million this year and $2.7 million next year in cap space, and would also give them a $1.725 million cap penalty for the 2 years after that. So it would actually be a pretty good, decent buyout there for the Islanders if they were to consider doing that. I could also see him try and buy out Cizikas. He's been a really good fourth line center, but I could see Islanders try and go in a different direction if they were to buy him out. It would be able to save $1.6 million on his cap space for the next 3 seasons. Then would have an $800,000 buyout penalty for the next 3 years following. So it would not be an overly bad buyout for the Islanders. It's something I think they should definitely try and consider. If you go to the Ottawa Senators, who I think could try and buy out a couple of players. First will be Joonas Korpisalo. He's still got 4 years left on his contract at a $4 million cap hit, so it's not going to be an overly easy contract. They want to try and move him, but I think they could actually try and work out a buyout. Now, if they were to buy him out, it would actually save them $3.6 million cap space this upcoming season. It would save them $3.1 million next year, $2.1 million the following year, $1.6 million in what would have been the final year of his contract, and it'll give them a $1.3 million cap penalty for 4 years after that. So it would not be an overly ideal contract to buy out, but it would save them a lot of cap space for both this year and next year. So it's something I think the Senators could definitely consider. Next up, we have Matthew Joseph. Now, Joseph's been a decent middle 6 forward there for the Ottawa Senators. He's another guy who I think could potentially be bought out. If that was to happen, that would save the Senators $2.2 million in cap space for this year and next year, and it'll give them a $1.1 million cap penalty for the next 2 years following. It's not, once again, an overly ideal thing, but I think it could be a really good boost there for Ottawa to free up some cap space. So I think it's a route they could wind up going. Next, we go over to the Flyers. There's a couple of players over there that I think could wind up being bought out. One is Kyle Peterson. He's been a really decent third-string goaltender for Flyers, but he has a $5 million cap hit. It's not been working out overly well. I could see him be bought out. It would save the Flyers $4 million cap space for this year, and give them a $2 million cap penalty for next year. So it would actually be a decent buyout there for the Flyers, and something I think they could definitely try and work out. And another guy who I could see the Philadelphia Flyers wind up buying out is Ryan Johansson. He did not play a whole bunch in Philadelphia, so he could potentially be bought out. That would save the Flyers about $2.7 million in cap space. It would also give the Predators a $1.3 million cap hit for this upcoming season, and both teams will have a $1.3 million cap penalty for next year. So it could be a decent buyout potential there for the Flyers to try and get rid of his contract. So I wouldn't be surprised if they took that route and bought him out. Another guy who I could see being bought out will be Lars Eller of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Decent middle 6 forward, could work really well as a third line center, but it's really on a bad contract for the Penguins. Buying him out would save the Penguins about $1.6 million in cap space for its upcoming offseason, and then it would give them an $800,000 buyout penalty for next year. It's a really good buyout in my opinion. I think something that the Penguins should definitely consider. Another guy who I'm not sure we'll see be bought out, but someone who I think should definitely be considered be bought out would be the San Jose Sharks' Marc-Edouard Vlasic. Hasn't really worked out overly well. I've seen a lot of people say that they should try and buy him out. Buying him out would save the team $3.1 million in cap space for this upcoming season, and $2.1 million in cap space for the following season. I'll give them a $1.3 million cap penalty for the next 2 seasons. So I could see that happen and give Vlasic a fresh start, but wouldn't be overly surprised if he continued to play with San Jose one more season, and then maybe they consider buying him out next year. Another guy who I could see be bought out would be Philipp Grubauer in Seattle. Hasn't worked out overly well for him. I know the Kraken could definitely try and upgrade their goaltending position. So if they were to buy him out, it would save them about $4.9 million in cap space for this upcoming offseason, $3.7 million in cap space for next year, and $2.6 million in cap space the year after, and it'll leave them with a $1.8 million cap penalty for the next 3 seasons after that. So it would not be an overly ideal buyout for the Kraken, but it would give them a lot of cap flexibility for this upcoming offseason. So that could be a potentiality there for the Kraken to try and create some more cap flexibility for themselves and maybe go after a starting level goaltender. Another guy who I think they could wind up buying out is the Blues buying out Kevin Hayes. He worked out all right in his first season in St. Louis, but not overly ideal. If they were to buy him out, they would be able to have a cap hit, as well as the Flyers have a $2.238 million cap hit for the next 2 seasons, and they would be left with $600,000 buyout penalty for the 2 years after that. I think that could be another potential buyout option there for the St. Louis Blues. On top of him, I could see Blues defenseman Nick Leddy also wind up being bought out. He could be a decent buyout option there for the St. Louis Blues. If they were to buy him out, it would save the Blues $2.4 million in cap space this year, $1.9 million in cap space for next year, and will leave them with a $1 million cap hit for the 2 years after that. So that would also be a decent buyout for the St. Louis Blues, given the fact that they could definitely use some of a fresh start for their blue line. Another guy who could potentially be bought out would be Mikheyev in Vancouver. Makes $4.25 million for the next couple of seasons. The Canucks are trying to trade him, but no guarantees, so they could try and buy him out. It would save them $3.6 million in cap space for this year, $2.6 million in cap space for next year, and it'll leave them with a $1.55 million cap penalty for the next 2 years after that. So it would be a decent buyout there for the Canucks, and definitely give them some cap space that they desperately need. So that could be a decent buyout option there for the Canucks. And lastly here, a potential buyout for the Winnipeg Jets would be Nate Schmidt. He's making, I think, $5.95 million for this upcoming season. Buying him out would save them $3.2 million in cap space for next year, and would give them $1.6 million buyout penalty for the year prior. It would be a decent swap there for the Jets, and will be able to give them out the Schmidt contract, so that could be another interesting buyout. So those are some buyout options I think that we could see over the next couple of days, weeks leading up to free agency. I wouldn't be over surprised if we saw some of these guys be bought out. I'm not saying all these guys are going to get bought out, but I think there is a possibility we could see at least a handful of them wind up being bought out. So I'll have to wait and see exactly what happens there, but those are my potential buyout candidates for this upcoming offseason. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts. Do you agree with all of my buyout candidates, or do you think there's a couple of other guys I've missed? Definitely love to hear your guys' thoughts on all of that, and what do you think about potential buyout candidates, and what do you think about their buyouts? Definitely love to hear your thoughts about all of that down in the comment section below. So I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you're liking, subscribe down below. Thank you for your support. We're able to with all of you guys, so if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe button down below. Don't forget to leave a comment down in the comment section below so someone else gets today's video. Also a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.